Hello, I am Diane Neubauer, and this is another episode of Conversations about Language Teaching. Today is special because I'm here with not just Reed Riggs, but also with Nan Ta. And Nan they're both friends of mine. I'll let them say their relationship with each other, but I'm excited to get to talk with both Reed and Nan today about teacher development and teacher training.
Yep, and
Nan,
Diane
do
will
you
be
want to
leading.
say?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, Diane will be leading today's episode. And Nan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Nan Ta, and I've been a teacher for over 12 years in secondary schools, teach Chinese, and I've been working with teachers, leading workshops since really 2014. So it's been a while.
Yeah, and we've done some co-leading together. Reed and Nan has done some co-leading together. The three of us have been part of a couple of projects, sort of, or we're about to be.
Yeah.
Is that right?
To be.
So yeah,
Right, we're about
I
to
can't
be.
remember like which way did the overlap happen. So, but we've had the opportunity to work a number of different ways.
The Southwest Cult was a recent one that you came out and gave the keynote, and then we hung out and talked about related.
Not Southwest
Hawaii.
Coast. That was Hawaii Association of Language Teachers.
It was the Hawaii State
conference.
Specific State Conference. Yeah.
Yeah.
About a year
Yeah,
ago.
that's right. Yeah, because then I co-presented with Nan and spoke there. So yeah.
Okay, well, I'm Reed Riggs. Nan and I are married. Nan is my wife. And we came together through actually a Star Talk program about teaching Chinese language. And we've just continued to be passionate about teaching teachers, teaching students, learning language, teaching language, everything related to that.
Yeah. So you have one of these unusual marriages where you both have a similar field of expertise in your work lives as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, unusual.
Yeah, not everybody can manage that well.
No.
So my husband is patiently letting me talk about all these things from time to time, but it's not his field. So I sometimes think about what would that be like at your home that you have a shared experience.
It comes
with
up
that.
a lot. I'll tell you that. It comes up a lot at the dinner table, even after dinner, and it spills into the weekend, and we just, we bounce ideas off of each other. So it's kind of nice to have someone who is in the same field and can understand what's going on and could help me expand on my ideas and help me find solutions.
Yeah, and it's good to have the differences that we have too in our experiences in the classroom, and also just sort of, I think we mostly overlap in our philosophies and practices and everything we care about. And then there are little differences where we'll kind of butt heads a little, but it pushes growth in each other. And so, yeah, it's a nice happy balance. And there are plenty of times when one of us is like, can we just eat? can we not talk about, not talk about work? Yeah. Can we just enjoy this moment and not? Yeah. So that happens too. But yeah, it's good fun.
Very good.
So do you want, Nan and I, all three of us, actually, we all have PhDs. Nan, do you want to talk a little about your PhD?
Oh, my PhD work. So I got my PhD in the College of Education at the University of Hawaii in Manoa in the Department of Learning Design and Technology. So the former name of the department is Educational Technology, but my field really focuses a lot on instructional design and like the science behind learning and how we retain information. But my specific research was on building and designing online teacher professional development for teachers of Chinese, Korean, and Japanese. So that I worked with Diane on that project, and it was like we had a beta stage, an alpha, beta, and gamma stage, and Diane helped with all three stages. And I was able to collect data and learn about how teachers' growth, ability, beliefs changes from the pre-stage to the post after a 4-day online course.
Yeah.
Before we continue, Nan.
Yeah, and I thought it was delightful to be a part of that. So yeah, I was just kind of advising and then helping you carry out the actual training program, the design work and the way in which you operated it, like from the research side of it, was entirely you. So, and I thought it was outstanding. So, and I got to see you get your actual PhD because I attended online. So that was very fun.
Oh, thank you so much. I couldn't have done it without you guys.
Yeah, you did great work.
Nan, the little red box in front of you, there's a can you turn up the volume a little bit? It's the knob to the very far left, right next to where the plug is, and just turn that up a little bit.
How about now?
Oh yeah, that's
Now?
good.
Oh, that is
Yeah,
better.
yeah, much better. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Well,
Yeah.
I had a question for just to kind of toss out an initial thing that either one of you could respond to, and I might respond to as well. And that is just when you think about teacher development, this might be a funny angle. What's missing that they didn't get in teacher education programs that makes in-service teachers need training? Does that make sense? Because I think some fields people get training and then they go off into their professional lives, and maybe within their company or something. Yeah, there's training that's ongoing, but it's not. I feel like in education, it's a really big thing. And in language teaching, I really feel like it's a big thing. We talk a lot about in-service teacher training. Why is that needed? And or what's missing from degree programs that's not getting the needs met.
Yeah. Right. I got my master's in teaching Chinese as a second language. This was in Taiwan, so it's a different context from the US. But just speaking to other teachers who have gone through similar programs as me, it seems like our programs have instructors, professors who are very well trained in the theory behind instruction design, the theory behind like language acquisition, second language acquisition, or like the theory behind phonology, syntax, and all the linguistic stuff, right? And not many of them have substantial experience in the classroom, right? And so like there wasn't a whole lot of micro teaching opportunities, or there's like my program, I had to do a 100-hour internship, which is super helpful. You kind of need that.
That's great.
Yeah. Now they don't have that anymore, so they took that out. But my program was long. It was like a 3-year program, 3 to 4 year master's degree. And so I know like a lot of other teacher certification programs in the US, it's just 2 years long, and they have like 1.5 to 2 years. And there's like a field work experience that's required. So I think that's super helpful to have hands-on. So there's like the theory that they learn from their textbooks behind different methods, approaches to teaching a language, and that field work. So there's a nice balance between the practicum and the theory piece. But at the same time, I feel like one area when I coach teachers, especially in language teaching, where a lot of the teachers are native speakers of that language, so they didn't necessarily grow up in the US, I find that a lot of teachers do struggle with classroom management and like that understanding of how their students are like, and the emphasis of connecting and building relationships with their students. I can understand, I can see how professors wouldn't touch upon that because they haven't experienced it. Teaching adults is very different from teaching K-12 students. And I find that the younger the students are, the more crucial it is for teachers to be able to connect and be liked by the students. Being liked by the students is almost foundational in order to build a positive learning environment for them to like learning. And like they have to like you in order to like learning. I feel like that's more important the younger the students are. High school, when you get to high school, like the upper level high school, I feel like that's not quite as important. They care more about like scoring well on the AP exam or the IP exam, passing that test. But when you teach like elementary school learners, middle school learners, like they want to go home and talk about what they enjoyed about Chinese class. And a lot of it has to do with the teacher. Like, do they like the teacher? Was the teacher nice? Did the teacher, was the class engaging? Did the students feel safe to speak up and to make mistakes in the classroom? Did they feel excited to continue learning? And what's important about language teaching is that unlike other subjects, we have to worry about enrollment. If we don't have the enrollment up, we may lose our program. And so I think that is so important to be emphasized in teacher training programs, pre-service programs. Yeah, I haven't heard much training in that regard. There should be a class or like a workshop just on how to build relationships with students, how to manage your classes. You can build relationships with students and be well-liked, but also be ineffective. So how do you strike that balance? I do feel like if your focus is too much on just implementing the 5 Cs, the national standards, and making sure you speak in the target language. Yeah, if that's like your main focus going into teaching secondary school, without considering how important it is to have the foundation, the relationship, and being liked with your students, like it's hard to be successful. So I would like for teachers to kind of strike a balance between the two. Like, how do you be aware of the standards? How do you get your students to be proficient in language? But just know that you can't do that until you have the foundations down. You have the routines established in your class. You have to put a lot of your mental energy on setting the right tone for the school year. And you got to hook the students into like your class in order for them to continue. And you have to think about their parents, because parents talk to each other. You want the students to have opportunities to bring that language, what they learn in the classroom, back to the other stakeholders, your bosses, maybe other teachers in the community, or their parents, so then they can talk about like how awesome your language program is, and that could bring up the numbers. That's something I feel like other subject teachers don't necessarily have to worry about, because students are required to take social studies, required to take English, but language, like you can easily lose your program if your class isn't both fun, but also you want the students to walk away feeling like they could use the language. So that's what's impressive about your program. Like, not only do the students like it, but the students can go home and like use the language. Some examples would be, go home and read this book you read this book in class, or this couple of pages. Go home and share with your parents like what you read. Get a signature from them. Record the interaction that you're using language with your family. So just so the family members and they both know that they are learning the language. Take them to connect with the community that uses the language, and help the students feel like, provide opportunities for students to feel like they are applying what they're learning, and that they can be effective communicators of the language or users of the language. So you need to kind of make the language and what they learn like come alive in like real world context. And I'm the global director at my school, global initiatives director. So I'm trying to find more opportunities for students to really go to the target speaking region and use that language. And that's when you really grow and be like, oh my gosh, all the years of Chinese, like I can actually understand, or I didn't quite understand I don't understand what's going on, but I'm learning. And then I see that this is real, and that I will continue to work hard so I can, achieve a certain level of proficiency in the language.
Yeah, you had a lot of excellent thoughts in there. And one of the things that I was thinking, like that balance between like being effective at developing students' language proficiency, but also remembering that or not even remembering, just like being able to also do the social and the human side of things. And that I think sometimes it's treated like, well, if you just know all that second language acquisition stuff, it's a mental game and now you're done. So that's what you need to know to be an effective language teacher. And I think you're right on. It's one of the reasons why I really liked my program and being in education rather than being in linguistics or second language acquisition or something. As fascinating and as helpful as I think those fields are in what I want to do in language education. But being in education, we get to think and are pressed to think constantly and holistically about the people in the classroom environment and the impact that they're having in later years or in other stakeholders, families, principals, administrators, lawmakers, all this kind of thing. Yeah. So we get to play with all of those aspects of the process. And but ironically, because I was just saying that, and I'm thinking from my experiences with College of Education and teaching in a teacher ed program a little bit, we did some of those things. I wonder sometimes, but I don't want to cut off Reed's opportunity to respond to those first questions, but you're shaking your head no? Do you want to jump in, Reed? Oh, I can't
hear you.
We can't hear you. Nope.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, let me know if there's an echo. So my this little headphone thing, I guess I twisted it weird or something. I don't have to respond now. I can wait.
Okay. Okay. The thing that I was going to say is slightly passed from my memory now. we'll come back to it because
Yeah,
it's
there
gonna
is
come up.
one thing I want to add that I
Mhm.
learned. One of my colleagues said something my first year of teaching that really still resonates with me today. He was also a new math teacher, and I was a new Chinese teacher. He announced to the whole school faculty meeting that like one of his biggest takeaways from being a first year teacher, he said that teaching math was only 50% of my job. And the
Yeah.
other
Uh-huh.
50% is not teaching math. Yeah, it's like administrative things like writing report card, grading, and connect and speaking with parents, but also like the character piece, the social emotional learning piece that you have to also juggle in your head and be mindful of all that. And like how if you see a student coming in and not looking well or they're lagging behind in their work, then part of your job isn't to teach math, isn't to teach Chinese. You're like, you want to check in on the students, like, hey, what's going on? How can I support you? You want to show compassion, right? And so all of that, I don't remember learning from any of my teacher education program, but it plays like as much as 50% of your job is like, yes, the administrative things that people don't really talk about, and how to write comments to parents and talk to your administrators, and also like connecting with kids and caring about who they are as an individual, knowing that um, they matter to you. That is so key. And yet that's it's not talked about in teacher program. And that's
Mhm.
one of the keys to success, I feel like, as any teacher.
Yes. Yeah, I brought it back up because I feel like some of those areas were covered in the program that I taught in at I'll say it
Mm-hmm.
because I think they're doing it so well. University of Iowa's World Language Education Program. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but here's where my next question was going to go. I think it's true. It's often missed or maybe de-emphasized, maybe because the instructors don't have the K to 12 teaching experience. That's often the case. If they're doing
Mm-hmm.
specialist language stuff, they're like the university professor for Spanish instead of the K to 12 teacher that got a PhD and became a teacher educator. So they'd never taught in a K to 12 school. So they might not have that even in their awareness.
Mm-hmm.
But where they do have it in their awareness, sometimes I think um, it might be there, but that bachelor's level pre-service teacher might either not, I'm not blaming them. It's not a culpability thing. It's not saying they're bad. It's my observation of my own students is that sometimes I think some of the things that I'm trying to give them, they can't take in yet. And they're all different. Some of them are really ready for a lot, and some are like just getting a little bit. And so you present and you show and you try to model and you give examples and you invite teachers in as guest speakers on Zoom and things like that. I wonder if there's sometimes an element where developmentally we're just not ready for the thing that might have been there in training, either pre-service or in service, frankly. Sometimes I think
Mm-hmm.
training doesn't seem as effective to somebody because maybe they weren't ready for some part of it, or again, not blaming them like they should have been ready or something like that. It's just
Mm-hmm.
psychologically, developmentally, professionally, you just weren't ready for that.
Yeah, they're not ready to perceive it.
Right.
It was said, but they didn't notice or take it in because it didn't maybe connect with anything, or they didn't perceive any need
Mm-hmm.
for it yet. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the
Right. So I
classroom.
think that
Yeah.
even in the university setting, then the importance of developing that sense of relationship and developing the model of I'm a lifelong learner, which you also kind of touched on in your
Mm-hmm.
first things you were saying, Non, that idea that
Mm-hmm.
like we need to continue to help students see like this is me as a person. This is not just me jumping through some hoops in a classroom, but this is me developing this skill set and learning. And so that they're going to think about what they can do the rest of their lives with it. I think when we model that as a teacher or a teacher
Mm-hmm.
trainer or a teacher educator, I think it's really helpful and powerful.
Yeah. Well, I want to
Yeah.
second everything Non said. I taught university for years before I went into the high school classroom, and I wasn't ready at all for the behavior issues that came up in the high school classroom. And it took me about a year, which would have happened anyways, because they need about a year for them to accept that you're in their community. And so I
Yeah.
look back and I think there probably wasn't any solution during that first year. However, it's good I was trying because I learned a lot of tricks. I learned a lot of ways to talk to students, ways to set up activities. ways to explain grading, ways to explain the goals of our class. And even if they couldn't be successful in that first year, purely because the students saw me as new, I was in that new label. The next year I hit the ground running and I wasn't new anymore. And I had all these tools for saying, this is what we're doing, let's go. Don't sit in the back, sit up in the front, let's go. And they like it. They appreciate it. Like they're happy. They like it when they walk in and they kind of test you a little and they'll try to sit in the back or phone out or talk loudly with a friend as if you're not there. They're shaking the ladder a little, as I call it. They're kind of testing if this ladder is safe to climb up. And I immediately show, oh, I'm safe. Come sit up here, put your phone away. We're going to get started. Here's our goals for today and let's get going. And once we get going, then I start having lots of fun. We get imaginative and all this fun stuff. So everything Non said, I've been through different kinds of teacher training. I did part of a, a teacher credential program in California. I got my master's degree at Sichuan University in teaching Chinese as an international language. I've worked with StarTalk teachers, and then just teachers online watching on Facebook as they say, our training never taught us this, our program, my certification never taught us this. So I have a pretty good sense of what's there and what's not there. I think there's one thing I would add to what Non said. I agree with everything Non said. And I want to play the mean cop. What do you call it? Good cop, bad cop, or something like that. I want to say
you're bad cop now.
Yeah,
was Non good cop? Is that okay?
You're all good cops, and I'm normally good cop too. I want to say the mean part that I think training programs are afraid to say or don't say because they don't believe it. But that the nature of language knowledge for proficiency, for communication, that kind of language knowledge isn't teachable in the grammatical syllabus, in the traditional way of teaching. You can't get there. And if you showed me a 21st century classroom where the students are engaged, there's great use of technology, they're teaching each other, they're creating their own content, they have lots of agency and choice, they create their own assessments and rubrics, everything is just up-to-date 21st century standards. It's a magical looking classroom, but the goal is to learn how to surf. And they're never in the water. All of that stuff is useless. It's all no good if you're not doing the main thing you need to be doing. And so what I see I want to step back into traditional teachers for a moment. Even when teachers come out of training and say, look, I do all these great things, I learned from my training. However, I don't use the target language with my students because I don't see the purpose of it. And I do mark them down for accuracy. I make sure that they memorize these things. I don't put much in context because we're going to build up towards that later. First we're teaching grammar, first we're teaching sounds, then we're teaching words, then we're teaching grammar. All that communication stuff can happen on their own time or later in life or when they go to the country. You're basically not teaching a language class. That's my bad cop take on it. That's you're not, it's a surf class that's not happening in water. It's a swim class that's not happening in water.
Learning about it, but you're not learning it.
Yeah, you're learning about it, but you're not building proficiency. And I think that more teacher training program, language teacher certification, or any kind of training, I think they're afraid to offend anyone. And so they just say, okay, well, okay, you have your beliefs about grammar. We'll also do these things too. And a lot of teachers walk away saying, well, I have so much to cover. Got to get through this textbook in the first year. I have so much, vocab to cover and grammar to cover. I just don't have time for any of that fancy stuff. Or it's just not my job. And we've said this on our show before that, what we are asking is that you do throw it away, that you do replace, don't add, replace. The stuff that students need for proficiency is going to be a little messy. You can't control every word that you teach and when. You can't control when they learn it. And when teachers say, oh yeah, they always forget everything. Yeah, I would say they never learned it. Acquisition means you got it. Acquisition means you own it. There's a permanent aspect to acquisition. It doesn't mean you can always access it easily. It doesn't mean you always know what context to use it in, but it means that it's not going to fade away after 3 weeks. And if it's fading away after 3 weeks, I would say that's not acquisition. You've taught something they've memorized, just enough for the test. If you emphasize that they studied just before the test, I would ask why. Why does it have to be just before the test? Is it because you expect that they'll forget it 2 or 3 weeks later? Then that's not acquisition. That's
Right.
that's
Yeah.
quick temporary learning. I wouldn't even call it learning. I would just call it memorization and give it some other name. That, you know, when I see students who can't do anything, like literally not even greetings, and the teacher says, oh, they did greetings their first year. That's not usage. That's not
Yeah.
acquisition. It's just not proficiency. It's so much that it's not. So I think we need to be a little more harsh in teacher training and say, here are some examples of things that lead to these outcomes, which are not proficiency and not learning, not acquisition. And this is what it looks like. The students don't remember anything. And these are those old practices that are causing that. So that's my,
And
that's
going right at
Um,
it directly,
yeah, I think
like,
we gotta be
calling
direct.
it out.
Yeah.
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 Well,
I do. Do you have something to say?
Go for it, Nan. I have
Yeah.
just so I don't forget, I have a story from teacher education stuff where I don't know how to solve the problem, and I'll see what you think.
Yeah.
How's that?
Right. I'm just hearing Reed share about like what teachers should, being very direct with teachers and what they should do, right? Yes, I agree, the whole should part. But at the same time, when teachers attend a lot of these workshops and all these teacher training programs, they hear like you should do this, should do this, should do this. But like I feel like a lot of teachers walk away feeling like it's just what they're doing just isn't enough. Like there's a new book that's out there, popular in education, called Never Enough. It's about students feeling that whatever they do is just never enough. And I feel like we need to think about teachers too. And like the message they're getting a lot from these programs, I mean, I'm guilty of it too. Like, oh, you can do more, you can do this, you could do that. And so they feel like it's like they're not doing enough. They don't feel like they're meeting the expectations of where they should be. They're not teaching their students to proficiency like they should be doing. But I feel like an emphasis that's really critical in pre-service training or even like beyond is like, how can you strike that work-life balance, or that include strategies to take care of yourself so you don't burn out? Because if you burn out, we all fail. We're losing numbers in teachers. We're already short on teachers, and we need to help teachers find ways to take care of themselves and maintain that excitement and that passion for teacher training, for language teaching, because students can sense that passion and your energy level. If you're worn out, if you're exhausted, if you're just overwhelmed, that energy gets transferred to your classroom. And we want to be cognizant of that and try to support teachers in building community. Like maybe teach teachers, help teachers understand like, oh, you can find ways to build a community at your school so you have a safe space to share your concerns, and try to help teachers be more efficient in their work. And like maybe you won't get to all your grading, or maybe find ways to provide feedback that's a little bit more intentional and like and not as time consuming for students, so teachers could like get through, still provide feedback, but not spend hours and hours on their weekends grading and then prepping for all that time. But how do we be more efficient in our prep work and our grading work and our time to support students who need that extra help? Like how to help teachers understand like what percentage of your work is the actual teaching, what percentage is grading, what percentage is like whatever your job entails, but also help teachers understand like, is that where you want to be? Are you spending hours and hours grading a week? Is that where you want to be? Do you want to cut that down and put more work time into the prep piece or the teaching piece or the helping out piece, which aligns more with your own values and makes you excited about teaching? So you don't avoid burnout, and also be kind to yourself. Walk away with one thing you want to try. And if you don't feel ready for that thing, it's okay. Put that aside. When you're ready, open that folder and try it out. But don't feel like you're not enough, because you are enough.
Yeah, I'm going to set aside the thing that I was going to go for before. And I think these are the things that I do hear at some of the conferences that really emphasize comprehension-based teaching. And now, anyway, I hear more of those kinds of things like avoiding burnout or taking care of yourself or working more efficiently or these sorts of things so that you can sustain this very challenging kind of a career and not harm yourself or your family or, you know, to have a full life outside of your work life. Yeah, and this is what it brings me back to again, that pre-service teacher stuff. I bumped into that. Okay, I'll share a little bit from what I was thinking of. I taught undergraduates this past 2 years, year and a half, and loved it. Loved it. They're wonderful. The thing that I saw though, that I think I probably would have had to at their age if I had been thinking of becoming a teacher right after my bachelor's degree. I didn't do it that way. They were often very idealistic. They were often very willing or maybe even unconsciously willing to spend too much time, I would argue, on making a lesson plan or doing a thing for their class because they were so excited about getting to teach. They were really wanted to get into the classroom and inspire kids. And so they were maybe starting to put too much of themselves into it and trying to give them a step back, like, wait, you cannot solve every child's motivational issue. You cannot make every child come out loving the language you teach in the way that you love it. You can do only so much. You can provide the safe environment. You can do the things in the classroom that foster proficiency. You can build on knowing your students and building those relationships that are critical. Those all count, but you also need to take care of yourself. I directly addressed that with a couple of classes, and I didn't have students say things like, nobody ever talks about this. I feel like we did. It must have been other people talking about it because they didn't act like I was weird for telling them things like, do you know where the hot tub is on campus and that you can get there free and stuff like that? Because that was important to me. But like finding those things that are going to be take care of yourself techniques. It's like they don't know what they don't know yet. And it's almost like they have to get into the classroom, start to hit a wall. And then maybe that's where the ongoing training becomes so important because, oh, right, maybe it wasn't there in their teacher ed program. If it was, were they ready for it? Or do they now go, oh, right, she said I was going to need to do X, Y, Z, and now I feel it and I can't do it yet. Whatever it is, taking care of yourself, building relationships with stakeholders or with kids or administration overhead or the language instructional strategies and processes that are going to be more effective. And so that there's that draw. The other thing you had said was like the motivation and the excitement to continue to teach. And that has been a thing that has been found in research about being a part of training and conferences. So that we'll show note one of the things for that. So that's I co-authored one with my former PhD advisor, Pam Wesley, where we interviewed people who had participated in summer training programs. And that was one of the things. It was just building the relationships with other teachers and reinvigorating your sense of excitement was part of teacher training and teacher development programs. Anything I said there that spurs something on?
We have 1:23 left. Do we want to jump off and jump back on?
Or do we want to say we're done?
No, what do you think?
To you guys.
Do you have any other thoughts to close with? None. Okay.
Nope.
I think that's good.
I feel like that we hit the really, I think the important things there.
And I guess the closing thing I would just echo that you already said is you're being a lifelong learner and I have heard from some teachers like, oh, I've been teaching for so many years. Why would I need training? Why would I need to go to other kinds of things? Like I have so much experience. I would say that that's not what anyone says among my circle of friends. Like the teachers that I see at conferences say the opposite, that there's a lifetime of learning to do and it never ends. And if it ever did get repetitive, if it ever seemed like, yeah, I'm not gaining anything, I think people would stop going. But they keep going because people keep thinking of fresh ideas and building on old ideas, but building new things on old ideas. So I think it's worth it to just keep going to training and conferences. Well, Dan, you want to close this off?
Yeah, thanks for listening today. I know there's only seconds left and we'll probably get cut right off at the end. So thank you, Nan, for joining us today. That was fun.